All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. If you want to, move a little closer, make this fireside chat more intimate, feel free to get a little closer to the front here. Um, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Matthew Beaver. I lead our team of cloud and platform architects here in the Americas. And then with me, I have Arvin, the head of data and AI enablement and product engineering at Verizon. So over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll have a little chat up here. We'll have an opportunity for some questions from the audience as well. So as we're going, take mental notes. If you have anything you want to ask, we'll run a mic around towards the end, and you can ask Arvin anything you'd like to ask him. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here. All right. So Arvin, they know your name, but they don't know much about you. So if you could just start by introducing yourself. What's your role at Verizon? How does that play into Verizon's larger objectives as an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, that's right. Good afternoon, and happy to be here. Thanks for doing this. I think it's a great topic. You have the whole architecting tomorrow theme, which is very interesting. So I think that's exactly what we are doing as customers as well of Teradata. So from Verizon standpoint, hope everyone knows Verizon. We're a mobile provider in North America, and we also operate in 150 plus countries. So our key focus areas in terms of objectives for the company are driving revenue, driving retention. That's a big focus area for us. Providing best-in-class customer experience to delight the customer. That's something that we work on all the time. And then the third piece of it is really maintaining that network excellence. Those are like the key priorities in terms of what are the focus areas that we look at. And from a data and AI enablement organization standpoint, my job is to ensure that we are driving those business outcomes. And what better way to do it than use data and AI? So that's exactly what my day job is, my bread and butter is, and that's what we do.
Awesome. If you could just give people a little bit of a sense of what Teradata looks like, the Teradata presence at Verizon, both maybe from an infrastructure perspective, but maybe more importantly, as you talked about, from the business outcome perspective. What kinds of use cases is Teradata helping Verizon achieve today?
Yeah, indeed. We've had a very long-standing relationship with Teradata. We've been working together for almost 25 years now, and we have a fairly large instance of Teradata. We are still running on-prem, so that's what we have, and we are working towards going to that hybrid lakehouse, data lakehouse sort of an architecture, and I'll speak a little bit more about that subsequently. But I think in terms of where and how we use Teradata, Teradata is the core analytical engine at Verizon. And what does that mean? We have our enterprise data warehouse that's used by over 5,000 users and analysts. And I'm not counting the 50,000 other employees that use data via dashboards and reporting tools. So it's a fairly large instance of what we do and how we use Teradata. It is our enterprise data warehouse, like I said. So what does it drive in terms of driving business outcomes and priorities that I was talking about just now? Is it really is used for all facets of running the business and decision making. So some of the things that we do that we use Teradata very heavily is, for example, in finance, marketing, and operations, as well as network, we use Teradata quite heavily. And some of the things that we do with Teradata is we have revenue assurance capabilities, for example. All of our billing data flows through. Our marketing campaigns flow through Teradata. We have customer segmentation and everything else that our sales and forward teams require. All of that works through that. We also use Teradata for operational analytics, whether it's running our call centers, whether it's running sales operations, whether it's global customer operations in terms of the 150 countries that we operate in. A lot of that goes through Teradata. And we have the right set of guardrails from a compliance and regulatory standpoint, because that is very critical in a regulated industry like telecom. So Teradata is basically the cornerstone, the foundation of everything that we do in terms of decision making at Verizon. And our intent over the last several years has really been to drive that speed to insight. How quickly can we get to the insight that will help the decision makers make the right decisions at the right time? Because it's not important just to make the decisions, but it's also important to make timely decisions. And that's exactly what Teradata drives or helps drive.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That's great context for everyone to understand. You mentioned a minute ago the theme, architecting tomorrow. You talked a little bit about how you're trying to drive towards a hybrid on-prem and cloud lakehouse architecture in the future. Could you just speak a little bit more about that? What does that look like for Verizon as they attempt to bring cloud into the picture, embrace this hybrid architecture? Are there some overarching guiding principles that you're using as you look to do that, especially as you said, with the regulations that you guys have as a telecom?
Yeah, indeed. The key tenets for us are rooted off of flexibility and having portability, with the right level of cost arbitrage as we think about the cloud. Because I'm sure everyone has heard these horror stories of runaway queries, and we put these workloads in the cloud, and the bill shoots up through the roof and everything else. So it's very important for us as we think about it, and that is one of the primary drivers behind why we deliberately picked this hybrid data lakehouse architecture, because we have the flexibility and we can port our workload almost on a daily basis where we want to run it. We get to choose that. Having that optionality is super critical. We picked Google Cloud Platform, GCP, as our partner in terms of running workloads on the cloud. And we have a great partnership with Teradata as well as Google Cloud that we are working towards. There is a significant amount of work that's happening. As we look at going to the cloud, it's not just about a technology program or a modernization, but it's a real transformation in terms of how we are thinking about it. We are getting out of the legacy, the technical debt that we have built and amassed over the last 25 years. We need to be simplifying things. I think that is a key focus area in terms of how we are thinking about it. One is simplifying the complexities in the business in terms of how we are looking at the technology, how we are looking at architecting and designing our platforms. That's very important. The second part of, as we think about going to the cloud, is also to ensure that, we are able to drive the innovation and agility that the cloud offers and the scale. So as we think through some of these pieces, it's as we think about how we want to architect our tomorrow, we're going to stay hybrid, and that's not something that we are doing for a period of time during the process, but we want to stay that way. That gives us the optionality that I was talking about. And I'll just use a simple example. We had built a couple of, actually have tons of generative AI use cases, but one case in point, we're starting to look at it. We started to scale it. We were in initial pilot about a few months back. Then we started scaling that. As soon as we start scaling that, we started noticing that the spend was going through the roof. It was like over $500,000 every month. And that's a lot of money. And think about just one use case. Our scale is very large. The number of customers, the data points, the insights we are crunching, and what we are leveraging AI and generative AI and agentic is very crucial in terms of how we are running our business. At the same time, we need to have the right cost footprint, and that's super important. So what we were able to do because of the hybrid architecture that we have, we were able to port that workload and bring it on-prem, run it our own GPU farms in our data center very quickly. That is the level of flexibility and portability that we expect as we think about all workload. And that's super important and top of mind for us as we are architecting what our tomorrow will look like.
Yeah. That's awesome. So a lot of benefits to that architecture, like you talked about, the flexibility, the portability, agility. But those hybrid environments come with some challenges as well. So if you could talk a little bit about some of the specific challenges of operating with, frankly, a more complex architecture, a mix of different technologies, and then also just the latency between on-prem and cloud. What are some challenges you guys anticipate, and how are you addressing those?
Yeah, look, designing and building one platform is no fun, right? If we don't have, some level of integration and what we need to do in a hybrid ecosystem, it becomes too monotonous and mundane. At least that's what I tell my team. Look, if you don't have the type of hybrid architecture and the design that we need to do, how we need to keep the data in sync across platforms and things of that nature, then what are we doing here, right? Simple stuff can be done by agents now. So as we think about that, some of the key challenges that we go through on a regular basis, almost daily, is to keep the two platforms in sync. There is a lot of data moving back and forth. It's not that we have an entire copy of it, but we minimize obviously the number of duplicate objects and data that's moving back and forth, but it's still massive volumes of data. If you think about some campaign tables that we have, that we've had for a long time, some of those tables have over 20 billion records. And it's not just like 2 or 3 columns, but we have like over 500 columns, because it has the customer profile, the right attribution, how we segment customers, and how are the different things that are used as part of the marketing process. So as we think about some of that complexity, moving that data, keeping the two environments, even part of the data in sync, becomes a huge task. And that comes with not just syncing data, but also trying to keep it as current and fresh as possible. Beyond that, we need to ensure that we are applying data quality. And the key to it is good quality data is very important and foundational to anything and everything that we do in terms of driving AI and machine learning use cases, now generative AI, that much more important. But some of the things that we do on an operational basis, on a regular things, the more important things that we need to also keep in mind as we are designing and architecting these platforms for a hybrid ecosystem is to ensure that we have a shared everything, shared nothing sort of an architecture where, and this is one of the big reasons, really excited about the open table format and what's really, what it can bring to the bear. So in terms of some of the things that we are looking at, we are testing things out, and we're really excited about the new capabilities, the performance improvements, and everything that the product and engineering teams are making. That's something that's super important. The second part of it is we've already built this out, and we implemented this almost 18 months back. We have a common catalog of all our data assets across the hybrid ecosystem. Everything that's sitting in the cloud, everything that is on-prem, we have one common catalog. And we expose it to the entire company through a data marketplace. So the functions or the capabilities that, these common capabilities that provide are super important as you think about any user at Verizon can go into the data marketplace and search for what type of data they're looking for. And it's not just searching by table names, but you can search with plain English. You can say, hey, I want to search this metric. It will find you all the tables and assets where the metric is. What are the formula and what the metadata looks like. How fresh is that asset in terms of when was the last time the data was refreshed. We also have additional characteristics on who the data steward is. We have a lot of metadata that we have captured as we went through this process. And it took us a lot of time and investment in time and money, but these are foundational pieces that are super critical for the success of a massive transformation program like the one that we've been on. So as we go through this, some of these key pieces that I talked about, one is the open table format. I think that's super important. Data catalog, marketplaces, for discoverability, some of these things are very important. And the other piece that I also want to call out is how you want to get to a place where we are able to decouple storage and compute. And that is important for scaling. And again, Iceberg and open table formats help enable some of that as well. So I would say that these are some of the key tenets as we think about what that architecture looks like, the challenges, and how we are mitigating some of that and working through some of these key design principles as we are architecting the platforms.
Yeah, you can't use the data if you can't find it, right?
Exactly.
So that leads into this to my next question. Your title of head of AI and data enablement. Um, let's focus in on that enablement word. So you just kind of talked a little bit about the catalog and the marketplace where people can go find the data. What are some other ways that you guys are enabling people to get access to that data to different AI processes so that they can leverage them most effectively?
Yeah, indeed. Over the last, I want to say maybe 3.5 years now, we've been on a journey to build data and AI products. And we're not just enabling what we used to maybe 15 years back. Hey, here is a table, we loaded the data, and here you go, have at it, analyst. So we've really started to look at bringing data and AI products to life. And what does that mean? That drives the cycle time and reduces that significantly from what you need in where the raw data is generated in a source system, whether it's a billing system or a online app where you're going and transacting with Verizon. Every signal, every intent, every transaction data that flows through, we crunch things up, we compute a lot of that pre-aggregated stuff, if you will, and get it to a place where it's an insight, it's available for consumption, where you can get to the next level in terms of making decisions quickly. So enabling those data products has been super important. As we've been working on these, what data products also help you do, it kind of brings that cross-functional analytical view together, which is very important. So you're breaking down data silos. You're reducing and removing the frictions. What the Shazam guy was talking about in the morning. I think some of these pieces are very important as you think about a large enterprise where we have thousands of users, hundreds of thousands of data assets. It's very important to kind of go through these processes in terms of how we do it. And the most important part of it is as we build out these data and AI products is to ensure that legally, from a privacy standpoint, from a security standpoint, from a compliance perspective, we are kosher across all of these. And that is a massive task for my team and I as we think about it. So we have launched a lot of these capabilities over the last, 3+ years now. And we continue to go on that journey. And this has also set a solid foundation for us in terms of what is coming next. So I think we are fully prepared of what's coming, and I'm excited about it.
That's great. How, just to take that one step further, how has this advent of Gen AI reshaped some of your thinking around that? Is the way, you mentioned being able to search with natural language in the marketplace, but are there other ways that you're already starting to or looking to implement Gen AI into this data AI enablement space?
Yeah. From an overall AI standpoint, we have a really good partnership with Google Cloud, and we use a lot of their services and capabilities, whether it's Dataplex from an overall cataloging, mapping, lineage standpoint, which inherently implicitly uses Gemini as the engine to generate a lot of that. And then beyond that, we also leverage Vertex capabilities. And one of the other things that we started to do as we were looking at generative AI and how we want to go about it is we built a layer of abstraction, and we call it Vegas. The layer of abstraction helps us use any LLM, choice of our LLM in the background without having to go through and build those pipes and wiring them each and every time for a given use case. So that layer of abstraction really truly helps. And then we also added a lot more capabilities in terms of how we want to measure, whatever the use cases are looking to do, how we want to measure, how we test the capabilities, how the level of inferencing that we want to do for a batch use case versus a real-time use case. As we think through some of these things, it was massively important to think about how we go about that. And that layer of abstraction in our Gen AI toolkit, if you will, also helps us, the use case or the example that I was using earlier, where we have optionality to port it and run it at the platform of our choice with simple configuration changes. And that's massively important. So any of you that are on a Gen AI journey yourself, I would highly encourage you to have that layer of abstraction that really helps you go through this architecture, the new architecture, whether it's hybrid architecture or fully cloud-based that you may have, but it gives you that lot of optionality and reusability in terms of how you think about it. The same thing, the data and AI products that I was talking about, reusability is at the core of what we are doing and how we are building these products. And ensuring that the common capabilities that we build that are important for legal and compliance needs are built once and used multiple times. So we're not like constantly reinventing the wheel each time. So these are some of the core things that we have done. And that is the strategic vision that we had as we thought through this, how we want to design this, how we want to build these systems. I thought it was very important for us to build that common layer of industrialized practices for engineering. As we thought through that, those are really paying off now.
All right. I'm going to come back to you at the end and have you tell us all a little bit about what's next for Verizon in this vein of architecting tomorrow. But right now, we'd like to open it up to the audience. So we have a microphone out here. Please just raise your hand if you have a question. Microphone will come to you, and we'll get to ask Arvind a few extra questions here.
Thank you. I think like where you've gone with having like one catalog, one marketplace that exposes these, or not expose, but like makes these data products available to the organization, that's where organizations want to go, and it's very hard to get there. Once you're there, how do you actually manage who's able to access what and all the, just the compliance that comes along with that due to different regulations and so forth?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question and a point. And I'll tell you, I mean, we're not fully there in terms of having a one single catalog, but we are getting there. We have the majority of our data assets codified in one single catalog, but behind the scenes, there are still some legacy components that we are working our way through. But having said that, I think the key, to managing it from a governance and compliance perspective, we have global teams. We operate in over 150 countries. Every country has a little bit of a different law. And as you can see now, every state is coming up with a different privacy law, and those need to be implemented very quickly. So having that flexibility in terms of capturing the right metadata, keeping it at the most granular level has been super helpful for us. And we keep all of that centrally available in the catalog and expose it through the marketplace. Our access control processes, you go search for an asset. This is what an experience of an analyst looks like. If you have an analyst that joined our company, let's say a week back, they go through their initial orientation and whatnot, they get access to it, they go to the marketplace, they go search for what their job is, what they want to do. I want to run call center analytics. I want to understand what those key matrices are and how does that look like. So they go search for that with plain English on the marketplace. They find the right assets, and then they can, right there, they can click and request access. The access request then floats through one, the supervisor has to approve. The second, it goes to this data steward or owner. They have to review the request and make sure that it's for real, genuine business case and use before they approve it. And once they approve it, it automatically gets provisioned. We have the workflows built in the background. So it takes those assets, whether it's data sets or databases, where they're requesting access. And once they have all the right approvals in place, access is provisioned automatically. And then they can go to the right tooling, whether it's a Teradata SQL Assistant or an IDE of their choice, or it's a BigQuery console, whatever the case may be. They can go there and get access to it and start doing what they need to do. All of this happens. The longest pole in the tent is the human in the loop who actually takes longer to approve versus the actual implementation of granting access and so on and so forth. So that's sort of how we have done this.
Hi, which catalog tool are you using?
We used to have quite a few, as I mentioned, but as we have started to consolidate all of these, we are leveraging Dataplex on Google Cloud as
Okay.
the singular catalog that brings all of this metadata together, and it also provides mapping, lineage, and all of the capabilities. And then for the KPIs and metrics for risk and finance teams specifically, we use Alation. It's just for metrics governance. Catalog, everything is in Dataplex, and we have a homegrown data marketplace that sits on top of both, that brings all of the capabilities together to search, discover data, request access, and so on and so forth.
And one more question. When you use Dataplex, you can scan on-prem and cloud or only in the environment of Google Cloud?
It does it in Google Cloud. However, you can feed data into Dataplex. Anything that follows the open lineage standards, can feed into it. So that's how we kind of take care of it. As we migrated a lot of our assets, we have everything now natively in Google Cloud. And then, anything that's legacy that's still outside of it on-prem, we feed into it through the open lineage standards.
Thank you.
No, in front. Yep.
So you said LLMs are deployed. Those are on. So where did you deploy those LLMs? It's in the cloud or?
We use Vertex as our model garden. And we have the choice. We have several open source as well as commercially available, whether it's Gemini, whether it's OpenAI. So we have Llama, we have a bunch of those that we have put in there, and Claude. So just depending on the use case and what you're looking at, you can literally just go fetch it from the abstraction layer. You have a drop down that you can literally pick, like we have in ChatGPT, where you can pick the type of model. It's very similar to that. That's what the abstraction layer provides. You can test things out. You can evaluate the different models, what the performance looks like for your given use case, and then pick the one that suits you the best.
Another question is, are you handling any hallucination?
Yeah, of course.
We are talking about hallucination.
Yeah, I mean, RAG and fine tuning are some of the techniques that we use for that, and that's critical, right? Having those capabilities, as we all know, generative AI is non-deterministic. So you're never going to get to a 100% accurate response for anything that you're trying to do. So it's important that as you think about it, you are testing that. And there will be some hallucinations depending on the use case, depending on the data that you feed, what kind of training was done, all of that good stuff. So it's super important to go through the RAG, fine-tuning, other processes to get to your acceptable threshold of what you need for your use case.
Thank you, Arvind, for your presentation. So I have one question. So these systems or these platforms are growing very fast, right? Can you share your thought process on the how do you monitor the performance of the platform? How do you expect the growth? And what are your key performance indicators that you are trying to put in place as a strategy to anticipate the growth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of the top of mind items for the platform teams that we look at in the operations. First is having a solid observability framework. And observability is critical not just from your platform or infrastructure layer, but also look at the data pipelines, the ML pipelines, the LLM ops that need to be implemented. So we have a different tooling, and if you think about it, the right sort of tooling that we picked for each of these different pieces that we have stitched together. So you have a holistic dashboard view sort of thing where the platform engineers can look at it across the board, can see how the platform is doing in terms of the health, also in terms of how the performance looks like, and keep an eye on it. We have thresholds set up. If it's missing any of the SLAs or SLOs and the thresholds, it triggers, paging to the right folks to take a look at it and take action on. So we have that entire discipline of giving that full end-to-end observability that we have put in place. Now, in terms of thinking about planning and forecasting, it is one of the key challenges in an environment where we have cloud as part of your architecture or design. It's super important that you're keeping a very close eye on it. So as we onboard new use cases, we have a really good checklist of things that our engineers and operations planners go through. How much data is expected, what kind of cycles you're going to be running, how many times are you running, is it batches or is it micro batches or real time, what kind of resources are going to get consumed. And we look at it holistically across the board, and we have the right sort of labeling that happens at a use case level. And this is very important. As you think about cloud-based resources, a lot of them are service-oriented and API-based. But if you don't have the right labeling, it's going to be extremely hard to have a solid FinOps practice to understand exactly what is the cost, what are the key drivers, how do you control it, what do you need to do to make changes, etc. So we've gone through all of those processes. We have FinOps dashboards that we look at on a daily, weekly basis to see how things are going. And if there are things that go over a certain threshold or budgeted amounts, then it flags it for action. Somebody has to take a look at it and figure out what needs to be done. And that's exactly what happened in the use case that I was talking about, Gen AI, which really went through the roof. We were looking at it, and the use case was scaling, and then we saw that, okay, it's not sustainable to go through this. So we were able to very quickly pivot and bring that back and repatriate it to on-prem. So those kind of practices, governance and FinOps capabilities are very important as you think through that. So that's something that we have put in place. There's always room to improve on certain things that you can do, which we continue to work on. But I think we are in a pretty good shape in terms of maturity of the practices and processes that we have put in place.
Anybody else? Oh, here we go.
They say it's never too late to ask a question, right? Great fireside chat there, awesome. When you talked about the hybrid environment, you have your on-prem installation, and then working towards the data product journey. Again, this is more of a philosophical question. I would love to understand what's your thought process on this whole warehouse concept and the lakehouse model. How do you see that evolve to meet the needs?
Yeah, look, I think, the lakehouse architecture gives you lots of flexibilities in terms of how you want to design, where you want to keep the data, how you want to share it across a hybrid, landscape that you have. You want to bring data in a direction where you're bringing the raw data at the most granular level, land it in the lake, you process it, and then you take the most valuable ones up into, the compute engines that are going to be accessed by the users, if you will, whether it's Teradata or whether it's BigQuery, whatever the case may be. So I think having that architecture gives you the optionality. And then you get to pick where you want to put what, right? Now, you don't want to put trillions of records of raw data in a very costly operations or a compute engine platform where the user is only looking for a very small aggregated data set for a given KPI reporting or whatever that they may be doing. So I think you want to look at the width and breadth and the depth of the use cases of what they want to do and want to place data for the appropriate layer. And then you can also pick the right storage tier to manage cost in an optimal fashion. So I think the lakehouse architecture gives you a lot of that optionality. Even in the on-prem environment, Teradata does have a way of looking at it from a fast cylinder versus, not. But then, you don't get to manage it very closely, and you only get certain amount of cylinders based on what you have in the past. And that's the reason what I was talking about earlier, the architecture to sort of decouple storage and compute gives you the capability to scale infinitely, if you will, especially when you're in a hybrid ecosystem or in a cloud-based ecosystem. So I think the lakehouse is a really good architecture paradigm, or archetype as you think about how you want to do it. Now, obviously, you have to be very prudent in terms of what you place where and how you process it, what your SLAs are. So you have to really think through that in your planning processes ahead of time. But works really well that way.
All right. Any final questions out there? Last call. All right. So with that, I'll ask my final question. Sure. we're hearing this architecting tomorrow theme, so just give us an idea of what's next for Verizon, whether that's technology, business use cases, whatever that looks like for you guys. What does architecting tomorrow look like for Verizon?
Architecting tomorrow, I think I talked about a lot in the theme of how we are thinking about it from an enablement standpoint. But we have a ton of business use cases as well. But something that's more near and dear to me, and I want to talk about that real quick, is we want to get, to leverage the newer technologies that are coming out like agentic to improve and get more efficiencies out of our own engineering processes and industrialization processes. We want to be able to build agents that can intelligently manage workload, place them, move them as needed, whether it's for performance, cost, SLAs, different reasons, and different optionality that we can build in, right? I look at it as a operations research sort of a problem. As you think about, you have finite set of resources and you want to maximize what you can get out of it in the process of driving the business outcomes. How do you go about doing something like that? And I think agents can do a lot of good from that standpoint because we keep hearing this, agents don't sleep. They work 24/7, 365. So I think having that is very helpful, and that's something that we are working towards building that into our industrialization practices and our foundational capabilities from a platform enablement perspective, which my own team, we get to drink our own champagne, right? So I think that's something that's super close and near and dear. In addition to all the stuff that we are doing with the business, enabling the use cases, driving the business outcomes, whether it's reducing churn, whether it's growing the top line, whether it's continuing to manage the expectations of the customer and provide them the best services and whatever the capabilities are. And data and AI is how we get there, right? These are some of the most fundamental ingredients in terms of what we're able to do. So exciting times ahead. And really looking forward to the partnership and the great work that we are collectively doing. I think sky's the limit at this point, pun intended there.